Benjamin Franklin Frank Norris Jr., March 5, 1870 to October 25, 1902, was an American journalist and novelist during the Progressive Era, whose fiction was predominantly in the naturalist genre. His notable works include McTeague, A Story of San Francisco, 1899, The Octopus, A Story of California, 1901, and The Pit, 1903. Norris was born in Chicago, Illinois, in 1870. His father, Benjamin, was a self-made Chicago businessman, and his mother, Gertrude Glorvina Dognat, had a stage career. In 1884 the family moved to San Francisco, where Benjamin went into real estate. In 1887, after the death of his brother and a brief stay in London, young Norris went to Académie Julian in Paris, where he studied painting for 2 years and was exposed to the naturalist novels of Émile Zola. Between 1890 and 1894 he attended the University of California, Berkeley, where he became acquainted with the ideas of human evolution of Darwin and Spencer that are reflected in his later writings. His stories appeared in the undergraduate magazine at Berkeley and in the San Francisco Wave. After his parents' divorce he went east and spent a year in the English department at Harvard University. There he met Louis E. Gates, who encouraged his writing. He worked as a news correspondent in South Africa, 1895–96, for the San Francisco Chronicle, and then as editorial assistant for the San Francisco Wave, 1896–97. He worked for McClure's magazine as a war correspondent in Cuba during the Spanish-American War in 1898. He joined the New York City publishing firm of Doubleday and Page in 1899. During his time at the University of California, Berkeley, Norris was a brother in the fraternity of Phi Gamma Delta and was an originator of the Skull and Keys Society. Because of his involvement with a prank during the Class Day exercises in 1893, the annual alumni dinner held by each Phi Gamma Delta chapter still bears his name. In 1900 Frank Norris married Jeanette Black. They had a child in 1902. Norris died in San Francisco on October 25, 1902, of peritonitis from a ruptured appendix. This left the Epic of the Week trilogy unfinished. He was only 32. He is buried in Mountain View Cemetery in Oakland, California. Charles Gilman Norris, the author's younger brother, became a well-regarded novelist and editor. C.G. Norris was also the husband of the prolific novelist Kathleen Norris. The Bancroft Library of the University of California, Berkeley, houses the archives of all three writers. Frank Norris's work often includes depictions of suffering caused by corrupt and greedy turn-of-the-century corporate monopolies. In The Octopus, a California story, the Pacific and Southwest Railroad is implicated in the suffering and deaths of a number of ranchers in Southern California. At the end of the novel, after a bloody shootout between farmers and railroad agents at one of the ranches, named Los Muertos, readers are encouraged to take a larger view that sees that through the welter of blood at the irrigating ditch, the great harvest of Los Muertos rolled like a flood from the Sierras to the Himalayas to feed thousands of starving scarecrows on the barren plains of India. Though freewheeling market capitalism causes the deaths of many of the characters in the novel, this larger view always discovers the truth that will, in the end, prevail, and all things, surely, inevitably, resistlessly work together for good. The novel Vandover in the Brute, written in the 1890s, but not published until after his death, is about three college friends preparing to become successful, and the ruin of one due to a degenerate lifestyle. In addition to Zola's, Norris's writing has been compared to that of Stephen Crane, Theodore Dreiser, and Edith Wharton. Although some of his novels remain highly admired, aspects of Norris's work have not fared well with literary critics in the late 20th and early 21st century. As Donald Pizer writes, Frank Norris's racism, which included the most vicious anti-Semitic portrayals in any major work of American literature, has long been an embarrassment to admirers of the vigor and intensity of his best fiction and has also contributed to the decline of his reputation during the past several generations. Other scholars have confirmed Norris's antisemitism. Norris's work is often seen as strongly influenced by the scientific racism of the late 19th century, such as that espoused by his professor at the University of California, Berkeley, Joseph Liconti. Along with his contemporary Jack London, Norris is seen as reconstructing American identity as a biological category of Anglo-Saxon masculinity. In Norris's work, critics have seen evidence of racism, antisemitism, and contempt for immigrants in the working poor, all of whom are seen as the losers in a social Darwinist struggle for existence. Additionally, His exaggeratedly muscular novels seem to posit women as biologically subordinate to men. Norris's novel The Pit was adapted for the theater by Channing Pollock in 4 acts. Produced by William A. Brady, the play premiered at New York's Lyric Theater on February 10, 1904. A film adaptation of The Pit was produced in 1917 by William A. Brady's Picture Plays Inc. Norris's short story A Deal in Wheat, 1903, and the novel The Pit were the basis for the 1909 D.W. Griffith film A Corner in Wheat. Norris's Moran of the Lady Letty was adapted by Monty M. Catterjohn in 1922. Directed by George Melford, the film starred Rudolph Valentino and Dorothy Dalton. Norris's McTeague has been filmed twice. The best-known version is the 1924 film entitled Grieg, directed by Erich von Stroheim. An earlier adaptation, Life's Whirlpool, was produced in 1915 by the World Film Corporation, starring Fanny Amarinoff and Holbrook Blinn. In 1962, the Frank Norris Cabin was designated a National Historic Landmark. An opera by William Bolkin, based loosely on his 1899 novel, McTeague, was premiered by Chicago's Lyric Opera in 1992. The work is in 2 acts, with libretto by Arnold Weinstein and Robert Altman. The Lyric Opera's presentation featured Ben Hentner in the title role and Catherine Malfitano as Trina, the dentist's wife. In 2008, the Library of America selected Norris's newspaper article Hunting Human Game for inclusion in its 2-century retrospective of American true crime. An alleyway in San Francisco is named for him, Frank Norris Place. It runs from Polk St. to Larkin St. and is located parallel to and in between Pine St. and Bush St. in the city's lower Knott Hill district. A tavern on San Francisco's Polk Street, near Frank Norris Place, is named McTeague Saloon in honor of Norris's novel McTeague, 1899. The interior and exterior are decorated with objects and imagery associated with the novel. The popular writing quip, "I hate writing, but love having written," is credited to a letter of writing advice written by Norris, published posthumously in 1915. Fiction. 1892, Inverness, Philadelphia, J.B. Lippincott Company. 1898, Moran of the Lady Letty, a story of adventure off the California coast. New York, Doubleday and McClure Co. 1899, McTeague, a story of San Francisco. New York, Doubleday and McClure Co. 1899, Blake's. New York, Doubleday and McClure Co. 1900, A Man's Woman. New York, Doubleday and McClure Co. 1901, The Octopus, a story of California. New York, Doubleday, Page & Co. 1903, The Pit, a story of Chicago. New York, Doubleday, Page & Co. 1903, A Deal in Wheat and Other Stories of the New and Old West. New York, Doubleday, Page & Company. 1906, The Joyous Miracle. New York, Doubleday, Page & Company. 1909, The Third Circle. New York, John Lane Company. 1914, Vandover and the Brute. New York, Doubleday, Page & Company. 1931, Frank Norris of the Wave. Stories and Sketches from the San Francisco Weekly, 1893 to 1897. San Francisco, The Westgate Press. 1998, The Best Short Stories of Frank Norris. New York, Ironweed Press Incorporated Short Stories. 1907, A Lost Story. In The Spinner's Book of Fiction. San Francisco and New York, Paul Elder and Company. 1909, The Passing of Cockeye Blacklock. In California Storybook. San Francisco, PUB by the English Club of the University of California. 1910, San Francisco's Old Chinatown. In Pathway to Western Literature. Stockton, Cal, Nettie eGames. Nonfiction. 1898, The Surrender of Santiago. Unknown. 1903, The Responsibilities of the Novelist. New York, Doubleday, Page & Company. 1986, Frank Norris, Collected Letters. San Francisco, The Book Club of California. 1996, The Apprenticeship Writings of Frank Norris 1896 to 1898. Philadelphia, American Philosophical Society. Selected articles. The True Reward of the Novelist, The World's Work, Volume 2, May/October 1901. Mr. Kipling's Kim, The World's Work, Volume 2, May/October 1901, and signed. The Need of a Literary Conscience, The World's Work, Volume 3, November 1901/April 1902. The Frontier Gone at Last, The World's Work, Volume 3, November 1901/April 1902. The Novel with a Purpose, The World's Work, Volume 4, May/October 1902. A Neglected Epic, The World's Work, Volume 5, November 1902/April 1903. Translations. Fifi, by Leon Farron, The Wave, Volume 16, Number 4, January 23, 1897. Not Guilty, by Marcel Leroux, The Wave, Volume 16, Number 25, June 19, 1897. Story of a Wall, by Pierre Lodi, The Wave, Volume 16, Number 35, August 28, 1897. An Elopement, by Ferdinand Bloch, The Wave, Volume 16, Number 52, December 25, 1897. Collected Works. The Complete Works of Frank Norris. New York, P. F. Collier Sons Publishers, 1898 to 1903, 4 volumes. Complete Works of Frank Norris. New York, Doubleday, Page & Company, 1903, 7 volumes. The Collected Works of Frank Norris. New York, Doubleday, Doran & Company Incorporated, 1928, 10 volumes. Norris, Novels and Essays. New York, Library of America, 1986,